What is going on, guys? It is Atari here today, and in this particular video I'm going to be discussing and proving one of the main possibilities and feats of Merge Zamasu in the anime and the manga adaptation. So the manga adaptation gives a little bit more clarity, and it kind of provides more evidence towards this suggestion. Now, of course, a lot of people are going to disagree, especially no, I'm not going to like throw any shade, but like certain communities, I'll just say, tend to disagree with the idea. But that's because a lot of people like to downplay Dragon Ball. And, you know, downplaying is probably one of the biggest things that Dragon Ball fans have to deal with all the time, especially in fiction. But the main problem with this is because misconceptions about string theory and actual quantum physics and in general, anything that has to do even with the casual body and ego, like so many of these things in forms of different forms of string theory, especially by Rob Bryanton, which is where I'm actually using his string project as the basis for. Many people actually underestimate the idea of these characters being any higher than 4-dimensional. So I'm going to be talking about dimensional tiering primarily for Merge Zamasu and proving why he is actually a 7th-dimensional threat and also has a 5th-dimensional feat in Dragon Ball Super. So primarily, let's start with the weaker end. Dragon Ball Super. Merge Zamasu became law in the universe itself. However, he was not just threatening just the quote-unquote universe, but he was leaking his energy, creating a bridge from one timeline to another timeline. Now, as you've seen in my last video, these are actually parallel worlds. And according to Rob Bryanton's theory or an explanation, the actual string for the parallel worlds are connected by the 6th dimension, which is the fold.
From the 5th dimension, the 6th dimension is what you would jump through to instantaneously move from one position to another or to move to a completely different 5-dimensional plane. Many probability planes make a phase space representing all possible outcomes for a unique universe such as ours. 6 dimensions.
Dimension is the property of being able to fold from one dimension to another on a specific coordinate. So the fact that Merge Zamasu created his own vibrations and his own ki energy and mass in order to create such a portal in order to launch himself from one dimension to another, then he's clearly showing that that is a 6th dimensional feat as a 5th dimensional threat. Moving on to the next part, misconception. Before I go into Merge Zamasu for the manga, let's talk a little bit about the misconception. Most fans, especially Marvel or DC fans, who generally have no understanding of string mechanics or string theory, and that goes for many other anime fans, get the misconceptive idea that a 4th dimension is time.
Imagining the 4th dimension. Here's where we start getting into some possible confusion because the same word can have many different meanings. When people say that time is the 4th dimension, what does that mean? The 4th dimension adds a way for the 3rd dimension to change. This is obvious when we say the 3rd dimension is space without time. But the entropy-driven arrow of time that people associate with this concept is obviously not spatial because it behaves in ways that are different from the first 3 dimensions. This is why some people prefer to say that the 4th dimension is a temporal dimension, while the first 3 are spatial.
And they think because Zeno only erased a timeline, they assume, well, he erased the timeline, so that only applies to 4th dimensional feat. So how is he even rated a 5th dimensional being if he got erased by a 4th dimensional feat? Well, the answer is very simple. You see, the 4th dimension technically doesn't even quantify as a dimension. In Rob Bryanton's video, he explains much more that the 4th dimension is just generally accepted by many physicists and string theorists that is more so a concept.
For us to see the 3rd dimension, because it takes a certain amount of time for the light from anything in the 3rd dimension to reach our eye. And that's just as true for our hand in front of our face as it is for a star 10 light years away. Saying that a 3rd dimensional object has length, width, and depth is a phrase we casually say, but we have to keep in mind that discussing a 3rd dimensional object like a cube is the same as discussing dragons or flatlanders. A 3D cube is an idea which we can freely discuss, but without using the 4th dimension to view such an object, it's only a concept.
Also known as hypertime, which applies to all other forms of dimensions. For example, if the 5th dimension is the explanation of parallel universes, well, do parallel universes or worlds work under time? Absolutely. Of course they do. And does traveling from one parallel to another through the sixth dimension operate in time? Of course it does. Everything has a measurement of unit, especially during the properties of duration. When you go into the subatomic particles that vibrate through the atmosphere and the air, an example in quantum physics, then you have to understand that they actually do move through lengths via duration, which means they are substantial, or they are, let's say, susceptible to time. And because of this would arguably say that this feat that Zeno pulled was destroying, erasing everything that exists in that parallel universe, meaning on a fifth dimensional level. He did not destroy the sixth dimensional bridge, hence why Goku and Trunks was able to use the quote-unquote sixth dimensional fold in order to travel back to a world made of nothingness. I'd also like to point out that Dragon Ball's interpretation of what nothingness is represented a little bit differently than most fiction. You see, the world of void, or just itself, has no space or time, but characters are still able to operate within it. It's like I said before, I could still bring an oxygen tank into a room with no oxygen. It's the same case kind of here. It's the artist's interpretation of Toei. They can't really represent a fifth dimension or a dimension just being erased altogether. The part 3 of the video, I want to talk a little bit more about pocket dimensions. Again, guys, pocket dimensions, or quote-unquote parallel universes, or its general pocket dimensions aren't the same as a dimension of a string. They are rather pocket dimensions that are tied to the actual third dimensional threshold, or depending if it's a parallel version of such a universe. For example, the Room of Spirit of Time is another dimension, but destroying it doesn't make you a quote-unquote higher level dimensional being, because you can have different levels of dimensions that exist. The fourth part is mainly talking about beings. Having a feat and being a being is two different things. Let me go into a little bit more explanation. When Goku surpassed Hit's time leap, not only was he moving beyond Planck's of a second, or in general, because in order for that, you'd have to foresee where Hit is going to skip. Hit skipped not only the third dimensional threshold where Kakarot is pertained into, but he skipped to a place where Kakarot was going to be via future. It's called time skip. Yet Goku was able to precognitively see where he was going to go ahead of time, predict it. And in this context, I'm showing you, they can move through the fourth dimension, or the idea of the fourth dimension of duration for that said string. Now, I know this sounds a little bit confusing, but basically put it this way. The string of time that applies to the third dimensional realm, Hit moved through that and was able to attack Goku. Later, Hit is able to create his own pocket parallels, and Goku was able to shatter those with Ki alone. So again, these are third dimensional beings, but they're messing with the properties of other strings, because as we know, the seventh dimensional string, which I'm going to get into now, is known as reality. But how do we get this reality?
6 dimensions. Many different phase spaces representing different unique universes make a line in 7 dimensions. Do any one of these 7D lines pass through every possible 6D universe? No. Other lines can be used to create a phase plane of physical universes in 8 dimensions.
This reality is a composite of all the possible parallel bridges and universes altogether, combined into giving us the actual reality of that world itself, making it an infinite piece. Now, of course, how can Zamasu even be close to infinite? What am I saying here? Well, the reason why I say in the manga he's a infinite worldly threat, or not infinite worldly threat, but rather a threat to the entire macrocosm of the Dragon Ball Super reality, it's because Goku, if we take what he said at face value, he says, but Zamasu said he's gonna destroy the rest of the parallel worlds too. There are about 6 of these parallel worlds, and so unlike in real life, there's not an infinite number. So you have to remember, in fiction, they can have finite numbers because, well, it's fiction. That's the most convenient. I mean, DC has 52 universes, so, I mean, it all depends. But for the sake of speediness, let's just stick to the general Rob Bryanton theory of string. So in this aspect, we know that Goku is now saying that Zamasu is going to destroy the rest of the parallel worlds, meaning all 6 of these universes. That would include the bridges that allow you to travel to one universe to another. So not only is this the 5th dimensional feat, showing that Zamasu can destroy 5th dimensional parallel worlds, but it's also showing that he would be destroying the quote-unquote multiverse, because parallel world includes everything that's within it. which includes the multiverse. So even being fifth dimensional via destruction is already a complex multiversal feat. It is a misconception that sixth dimensional is a complex multiversal feat, as six dimensions is just the bridge that allows you to get from one form of existence of a coordinate of a parallel reality to another. So he's not really needs to destroy the bridge, and he doesn't really need to destroy it in order to be complex multiversal. By destroying the actual parallel world, that's already multiversal. But by destroying the rest of them, that's complex multiversal. And since it's shown that by Zeno destroying all that exists there, he destroyed actually the time ring within itself as well. So when we understand this, as far as dimensional tiering goes, if we took the state as it is, and Zamasu actually was being honest when he said parallel worlds aren't the only thing we're going to destroy, then now it means Zamasu could have destroyed all parallel worlds, which would include all 6 dimensions, which are the bridges that link these parallel worlds, and by proxy would have clashed or would have left the 7th dimension, aka the Dragon Ball Super reality, a void, and by doing such would be a 7th dimensional feat. Now, I hope this explained a little bit to you guys. Hope you learned something. Give a like. Thank you guys also for the 100 subscribers. I thought I'd return something a little bit special with this video, of course, giving you guys some newfound information in terms of Dragon Ball. It's a little difficult for most people to accept because they say it's headcanon. I mean, of course, the authors themselves don't even confirm Goku is universal by their opinions. And that's not even, excuse me, not the author, but other writers. And these writers' words aren't actual God. They're more so just opinions. Because, as he said many times, oh, in my personal opinion. So, again, we got to take a lot of things with a grain of salt for the most part. But if we're going to take things verbatim and have a little bit fun with science, then yes, Zamasu is a 7th dimensional threat to the actual Dragon Ball world. And if Goku being near relevant to this Merge Zamasu, and he had the time rings to allow him to transfer to one world after another, of course it would take years and years, and who knows how long it would take. But just given the power scale itself by comparison, yes, that would mean generally Beerus or Merge Zamasu level characters, for the most part, would all be 7th dimensional threats. Of course, if they had the time ring to allow them to go from one place to another. Even though Zamasu speaks, he doesn't need the time ring. But the point is, they can all threaten to destroy all of reality. And at this point of Dragon Ball, that's not really a big deal, considering even Kid Buu, who at Highball was only a galaxy buster, still was a threat to the entire universe. So we need to understand that these guys being multiversal, potentially, even in the manga, is not too hyperbole for the most part. Of course, it could take time, but the point is to express that he's still a threat. So as a result, not as concretely as threatening as the Astral Zamasu within the actual anime, but nevertheless, still a powerful being within itself. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully I'll do another video on explaining to you a little bit more about string theory in regards to dimensional tiering for other anime verses and why it doesn't apply. Yes, I'm looking at you, Kami Tenchi, quote-unquote 22 universes, or excuse me, 22 dimensions. String mechanics and many others would just laugh at you because in reality that doesn't exist. But I'll talk a little bit more about that another time. Thank you guys for watching. Atari out.